Hello, my fellow Voyagers, and welcome back to Soul Spec's Healing Abyss. So, today we're going to talk about the dynamics of competition and perception of what we think we're competing with when it comes to soul work, trauma, past life, etc. A lot of my content is always going to be about unlearning what the avatar had to learn in order to survive so that the soul could unlock its mind. Because we say conscious mind and we say subconscious, right? In my personal opinion and experience, the conscious mind is the physical avatar ego, right? And then the subconscious is the soul's or the soul's past lives memories. And when we allow ourselves to go past conditioning and get to the basis of us as a human foundation and looking at it as we are a vessel, right? We're a brand new spaceship that we just received, okay? Or a brand new car, whichever analogy works. It still is just a vehicle. It sits there unless you utilize it. It doesn't matter if it's the most prettiest, beautiful vehicle or spaceship. If it's not utilized, it's just going to sit there. This is the same of the human flesh. We, the soul, embody the human, and then we have to learn how to drive it. We have to learn all the nuances, all the kinks, all the way it feels, the way it turns, the way it stops. Like, this is part of the soul's journey. But when we're born into this earth and born into our environment, which is then our imprinting of our parents and their parents and our ancestors, which is beautiful, but depending on the distortion of the imprinting, the soul's journey gets stopped because the human has to then finish its development. And if we're not able to actively develop our understanding of perception and competition within our own thinking, because I think people make competition seem negative. Competition is just saying, I have studied and learned up until this point. Now I'm ready to show what I learned, right? Now I'm ready to utilize my skills and put them on the forefront, put them in the spotlight. It doesn't mean that you're going to win. It doesn't mean that you're losing. It just means that you're in a competitive state where you want to showcase how much wisdom you have about a topic or how much ability or agility you have on a skill. And that's the part of where you get the soul conscious and the heart mind talking, right? Because they are the ones that continuously talk from the inner child's voice that then tells us how we go out into the world and operate with others. So, like, for example, you'll see people where you're in a healthy competition, you start to win, and they get really upset and they're like, you're not playing fair. And in their mind, because they've studied all of the logical perceptions of the game, they still forget that there's a spiritual element that drives those movements in that game. And if you're not, I would say, equipped in working with your soul that way, you're going to then revert to your inner child, who more than likely will throw a tantrum because that's what they remember. That's what the body remembers. So emotional intelligence is about training that child to understand you're not going to win everything every time. And it's not that you lost or that you're not good enough. It's that someone else has a better ability at recognizing nuances of the same thing that you're doing. And now they're taking it to a new level where you're going to have to either take it to a new level yourself or reside where you are. There's nothing wrong with residing where you are as long as you know that you're willing to say, I have more work to do and I'm not seeking blame, right? Same thing when you are at that high level, competitive level. That's what I really wanted to make this topic about, because I think a lot of times we forget when we look at athletes and actors and actresses and speakers and people who are on a large stage, we look at it as like, oh my gosh, this person, they just made it. They just did a few auditions, or they just got lucky or whatever. And it's like, people forget there's 365 days in the year, right? There's 24 hours in a day, all these minutes, it's time, all that time of being patient and being diligent and being consistent and focusing on how you want to present yourself to the world is a choice. This always comes back to our free will, right? For me, I had to learn two things. I had to learn how to allow the experience of occasional victories to happen emotionally without judging the situation. So, like, for instance, I recently was at the store. There's a clerk there. Bless their heart. They are always upset. They are always upset. It doesn't matter what's the situation. They are always upset. They just don't want to be there. And the first time I met them, I did not mean to, but I did something where it upset them and they just went off. And I kind of just laughed and just was like, whatever, and did not try to antagonize them, but in that situation, it did. And I just had to end up walking away because they were just stuck in their competitive anger of like, I can be more angry than you. And if you want to take me there, I'll show you. And that's where I started to recognize, like, I'm going to let them win this. I'm going to let them have this. They really, really want to be mad. They really, really, really want to scrutinize this situation. So I'm going to let them have it. And in that situation, I win and they win, right? I don't think people understand that allowing someone to win once in a while is not bad. You don't have to win every time, because winning is showing grace, believe it or not. A lot of times when you can walk away from a situation that no longer serves you, that is winning. No matter if on the outside it looks like you're losing. If you know it's providing you peace, providing you clarity, providing you empathy, do it. Because I think a lot of times we the human end up competing with the soul, and then the soul feels some sort of way about it, because remember, the soul is only here because it didn't complete a path. So the soul's going to have a ton of triggers, a ton of them. You ain't even going to know where they come from. Sometimes people be like, I wasn't even that upset about it. At least I didn't think. And then you walk away and your mind is just racing and your emotions are all over the place. You're like, where is this coming from? And you start getting depressed because you think something's wrong with you. And I'm like, no, baby, your soul has past timelines that it has not healed. And it's time for them to heal them. And if you, the physical flesh, or the spaceship, as I like to say, are prepared and well equipped and you know what to do, you will run perfectly while you're going through chaos on the inside. And that chaos then is going to have to settle at some point. But if you can guide your soul through that, then you start understanding that competition is how others see you. When you're competing with yourself on a high level, you're going to call in others who compete with themselves on a high level. When you compete with yourself on a low level, you're going to call in others who compete with themselves on a low level. The goal is to try to not overly compete with yourself. You're always going to compete with yourself. You're not getting away from it. Competition to me is not bad, but competition is also within choices. Like, should I brush my teeth or not? Well, now you have these two things that are battling, like going against each other to figure out who's going to win. So for me, I'm like, rationally, I should get up and brush my teeth because that's probably the better thing for my gums and my health and everything else, right? But emotionally, I can be like, I don't want to do it right now. It can wait till later. I ain't gonna die if blah 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 if I do it right. That's the moment of realizing that everything is a level of competition, because it's always putting you in a new ranking, right? Of how you take care of yourself. I think people forget that when you see people who physically take care of themselves to the point that it's like, oh my God, they are an Adonis or this untouchable beauty, or oh my gosh, I can never be. All of the human flesh comes from the same place. It's all about discipline and molding. And if you want to be at that level, that's a choice. No one says it's easy. Let me tell you this right now. It is not easy trying to convince the body, your inner child, that it needs to be healthy and it doesn't need to eat cookies every day. As much as we love cookies, it's probably still not the best idea to eat them every single day if it has a ton of sugar in it. Let me rephrase it. A cookie is not bad. A cookie is how it's made or the process, right? We can add as much sugar or not sugar. But the sugar aspect of it is what we know we don't actually need. We just want it. And so we have to learn how to tell ourselves, is this going to help you win? Or is this going to affect the view of how you now walk into other situations? And for myself, it's like, no, I know I'm going to wake up with a sugar headache and I know it's not going to make me feel good. So for the betterment of myself, I am okay with letting this situation win over. And that's kind of how I then walk out into the world. Like, if I see that it's for fun, if it's a fun competition and everyone involved knows it's just for fun and we're just having a good time, love it, my favorite. I am not really built for sports. I am built for it physically, but like emotionally, I am not that competitive where I want to put my physical form in any type of danger, because that's just how I've always been as a kid. But what I have learned is that when you talk about how other people's views of competition and rivalry can influence how they believe you think about yourself or whether they support you or not in a challenge, that has become a huge factor in how I actually find my tribe. I've realized that I really enjoy being around people who like to not really care about what others think about what they're doing, but what they're doing is actually benefiting others around them and they don't even realize it. I think that this comes into the play like strategies for success in competitive environments, and right? If you know how to strategize your emotions, then you know how to strategize your logic. And whatever logical, practical outcome comes from that, you know within yourself that you made an emotionally sound decision so that your foundation is logic. If your logic is only based in emotional triggers, then everything's a competition. Everyone's a competition. You got to have the bigger house. You have to have the bigger car. You have to have the best everything. And then you go home to all that stuff and you still feel depressed and you don't know why. And it's like, why do I feel sad? Why do I feel depressed? And it's like, well, it's because you're not balanced. Your cooperation and competition have to be balanced, right? That's what teamwork is. That's what makes a team. That's what makes a game, is competition and cooperation, and effectively knowing how to understand that occasionally teamwork and letting others succeed in certain situations, it can help you build good relationships and reduce conflicts. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm 6'5", right? I know that if I really practice the game of basketball, I could dominate. But I don't play basketball, so anyone can beat me at this state. Like, anyone. I might have an advantage because I'm taller, but I don't have the skill set to be competitive the way that others might be, right? That's okay. This is the type of situations where we have to understand that it's fine to know that we're built for something, but we're not necessarily meant to be that. You know, a lot of people told me growing up, you should be a football player, a basketball player, and all these things. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't have a drive for that. And you have people around you like, yeah, but you can make so much money and you can do all this. And I'm like, yeah, but my soul, it doesn't get excited the way other souls do. And I don't have any ill will against sports. I just saying that I physically am not the type of person who wants to I don't want to run up and down fields of any courts or anything. I just want to watch. And so that for me has definitely helped me understand that anytime you want to get practical advice from an individual, you're going to have to go within first. and ask, what is it that you're seeking when you're asking a question, right? When you're going into a competition, there's an end goal to win this game with these tactics and these tools. So then I ask myself, okay, well, with these tactics and these tools, is this the way that I want to win the game? And for some people, it's yes. For some people, it's, well, maybe I need to tweak it a little bit. And for some, it's just a hard no. You're going to have to be okay with knowing that the outside world is not going to like that much. The outside world is very much so going to feel like you are not playing by the rules, that you might be trying to disrespect the culture that it is. But it's like, well, there's many ways to get things done. There's always the fork in the road theory, where no matter what, there's that fork. But once you go down that road, well, there can be another fork and another fork, and it'll just keep branching off and extending and going outwardly. And so in that competitive world of emotions and understanding the soul and understanding the ego, you get to marry the two together. And that's where the psychology of how people challenge you comes into play. Because you're always going to meet that person, right? Shaken, not stirred. They don't know why they can't bother you. They don't know why they can't get to you, but it is their goal to break you. And I'm like, where does this come from? Why are you so emotionally strung out on trying to break me emotionally? And that's when I recognize that it's like, they don't know where your faith comes from. They don't know where your trust and love comes from. And they want to know, how do you have it? How do you keep it? What do you do with it? And I really started to explore why people were always challenging and pushing back in certain situations. If you walk in to a room, society has taught us to feel like we're all supposed to put our heads down and act modest, right? I had an ex who said that to me. He's like, you're not modest. Sometimes you can just walk in a room and just act like, you're quiet and put your head down. I was like, first of all, I'm 6'5". I can't. Second, I don't walk into rooms and just start talking. People walk up to me and start talking to me. And in that moment, I engage. And because my personality is big and outgoing, it feels like I'm performing. It feels like I'm on stage. And I tell people, that's who I am. That's not me pretending. And unfortunately, society has built a world where if we don't know ourselves, it's much easier just to put on the mask of others. And this is where you get the challenger's dilemma. This is how people start seeing themselves as challengers against themselves and challengers against the world. And then this is where we fall into survival mode and overly surviving and overly being ready and overly knowing that if somebody want to F around and find out, we're going to let them, right? That's to me, that's the part of our spiritual journey and soul journey that we have to take full responsibility for. Don't get me wrong, I was a trigger happy temper when I was younger because I didn't have anyone who emotionally could console me, because I was so big and I felt so intrusive to others that for them they felt like, well, he should know how to take care of himself. He should know how to coddle himself, right? Because I can coddle everyone else and take care of them. And you kind of lose track of yourself in doing so. You become this over nurturer, and then you start competing with yourself to be the best nurturer, because if you nurture yourself so good, maybe someone else will nurture you the same. Probably not. Probably not. The old saying goes, you attract what you deserve. And so if you nurture yourself with all the same elements of saying like, look, I'm sorry that we had to go through trauma, and I'm sorry that you can't see yours right now. But it's also not fair to go out and bleed all over the place. And when someone tries to help you, you're like, oh, no, this is just superficial blood. It's not real blood. And you're like, okay, well, you were crying like it was real, and I tried to help you. And every time I came running to help you, and even after I realized it wasn't a real wound, I was still saying clean you up. And I learned that's not my responsibility. It is not. If someone genuinely is bleeding, I'm definitely going to help them. But if it's someone emotionally bleeding all over the place and they know they're doing it, I mean, there's some who don't know and they can't help it. And all you can do is empathize with them and try not to sympathize because that is their way of getting you in. Unfortunately, that is a form of emotional manipulation where even though you might be in that actual chaos, Disney did it so good with that movie. I forgot the name of it, but it was about the musician and the soul, and the little tiny soul didn't know who they were, and they kept going back through the cycle and, starting over. And they're like, I don't know what the problem is. Like, I'm just a soul. It's not my fault this human isn't equipped for me. And I laughed, and then I realized when that soul had to go into itself, and it was in that bubble of darkness where everything around it just felt like it was encapsulating, and they didn't know how to quiet the noise. They didn't know how to quiet the chaos. This is the part of the human that we're supposed to integrate into spirituality, and recognizing when we're having these moments of emotional distress, it's not us. It's not us. The human on an everyday basis is just walking around, eating, existing. Emotions are a part of the soul, and the soul is a part of our ancestry. And our ancestry is a part of our cultural conditioning. And our cultural conditioning is our societal norms of what makes things function and work without too much overlap of chaos. And then past societal, it goes into environmental. How do we cooperate with our actual living, thriving environment that is always competing against itself because it's living and growing and dying and living and growing and dying. And it's symbolic because they can do it physically. We as the human do it emotionally. And this is where metaphysics and everything come in, and understanding how we're made of all particles from the earth. And if these particles are feeling some type of energy, we, the human, are going to feel it too. I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is woo woo and la la la, and they don't trust it. But you have to know that anything you feel, lack or abundance, comes from your soul and your soul's healing and its level of willingness. Because remember, you don't have to do it. But I am emotionally competitive. So I am one of those people where I went into that abyss of my soul's past. And I did it the most I could with my upbringing, with my ancestry, with things of the unknown that I could never have known, but I would get on Google and research it and go get a book and research it more. And the more I learned about it and read about it, for some reason, it would click in my soul. My soul would be like, oh my gosh, I remember that moment. I remember my past life. I was doing that thing and I almost won and I almost made it. And I made it right to my point, my checkpoint. And instead of just going straight up, I went off to the side a little bit and I fell off a cliff and I had to start all over. Like, that's the video game. That's literally what it is. It's all a video game. And learning how, again, the dynamics of competing with yourself is then how you perceive what you've lost. If you think you're losing something because you've worked hard for it, then that is where you're going to have to ask the ego, well, what was the point of doing it if it was only for winning? What's the purpose? What's the functionality of the purpose that you're trying to correlate back to why we did all this work and competed with ourselves and everyone around us to be the best? And then we get there, and again, we have the challenger's dilemma where we don't understand why it's not working the way we want it to work. And this is where we have to learn with that dilemma and prevent conflicts inside of ourselves, right? Learning how to say, I am only here to observe. And as I observe, kind of like Quantum Leap. Oh my God, I loved that show growing up. Like, I loved that show growing up because to me, it made so much sense. It's how I felt every day, looking in the mirror and knowing this is a body that I'm encompassing, I'm inside of, but it doesn't technically belong to me because I can't actually really control it. If I could really control it, I would never die. I would never need to eat certain things. I would never need to feel a certain way, right? But we can't. We don't, as humans, have that type of control. We only have the ability to be in charge, right? Being in charge is a directive given to you from your higher self. And it says, I need you to bathe, feed, and take care of the physical form so that when I need you to go on mission and travel over here or go over here to do this work, that you're capable of doing it, right? If we aren't, well, spirit doesn't get mad at us. The universe is not upset. They're like, okay, well, I'm just going to find a vessel who's ready. And in your mind, you're like, why did they just pass me by? I'm just as good, if not better, because you're competing with yourself in a way that is distorted. You don't see that it's about helping yourself grow. You see it as winning to get attention or validation. And that's the part of any type of energy work you have to let go of, right? We can't get so caught up in feeling like, well, I did the work and I did it the best I could do. So therefore, if they don't like it, then they can F off and that's that. Well, yeah, that's true. But you also applied, right? If you're applying yourself to any situation, you're going to have to accept the outcome if it's not the one you wish for, the one you wanted, right? So for me, I learned that I have to be my own cheerleader. It's been a really fun process because I don't always give myself the kudos I deserve. Not trying to sound egotistical at all. I know this podcast, it sounds very like one-dimensional, possibly, I'm not sure. I'm sitting here recording this, talking about my experience and how I perceived it, and I hope it's helpful. I'm never trying to make it like I'm this expert on this topic, and here's all of this experience that now you have to go out and try to do the same. No, I have gone through so much in my physical world of trying to be a perfectionist and appease others and competing for titles and awards that I never asked for. And my soul just giving and giving and giving, and we're both feeling exhausted, and years pass and time pass, and I look back and I made it to this title, this thing, and I'm like, I didn't ask for any of this. Like, I worked hard for it, but I didn't ask for any of this. And that's where the soul identity consciousness comes in, because then it's like, well, what do you really want to do? And this is the part where we used to get shut down as kids. That's not a real job. You can't do that. You can't make a living off that. Meanwhile, there's people doing their day-to-day jobs, but as soon as they get off work or while they're at work, what are they doing? They're looking at entertainment. The same people they say can't make it or it's a 1 in a million shot are the same people they are digesting their content daily and praising, right? It is the weirdest thing to be praised for being good at something and then to be torn down for it. That is the duality of life. That is the polarization of the whole. And that's where it's important to know that you are both your masculine and your feminine at all times, interchangeably, the ebb and flow, working together. Because again, this is how we start to navigate the soul deeper. If we feel something that is pretty and fun and we just want to receive and relax, that's the feminine energy. It has nothing to do with the biological parts, which I've talked about many a times in my content. It has to do with how you love yourself. Literally clipping your nails, washing your body, putting on moisturizer. That is how you love yourself physically. How you love yourself spiritually is reading content that you like, eating foods that you enjoy, going to the mall or whatever makes you happy and it just brings you peace. And then the higher self is about purpose. Like, now that I know, like, I like sitting at home and I like creating content around consciousness. Okay, what am I going to do with this? I can do nothing. That's a choice. This is where people talk about NPCs. Like, that's a choice. I can be a human knowing that I have all this vast information and never do anything with it. I just live a human life. There's nothing wrong with that. But some of us are like, you know what? this has been nagging me for years, and I'm ready to play this game. Let's see what this game is all about. That's where you get to walk in and say, oh, wow, there's a whole soul path. I thought these were just interests that I had. No, they were your soul saying, hey, I was really good at this in the past, and I would love to pick this back up if you're willing to put in the work. And if the human is healed, they'll say, yeah, let's do it. Let's pick up that instrument. Let's try that new activity. Let's go back and do this thing that I feel like I remember, but I don't need to be a perfect master at it. I just want to try. That is healthy, baby. That's where we want to be. That is the healed side of us, because we're willing to try without it being about some outcome. If it's only about an outcome that was pushed on us or just pressured on us, you'll probably never be happy, because it's not our energy. If it's our own energy that's the pressure, it will work. It will always work, because it's fueled by us. And as long as we have the motivation and the discipline and knowing that I want to keep competing with myself because I know I'm getting closer to an answer for me. The answer is always for you. It is not for others. It is not meant for others, which is why sometimes when you speak to others about how you're trying to put yourself out into the world and how you want to present yourself and ask for respect and do these things, or rephrase that, how you present respect, because I don't think it needs to be demanded or asked for. I think it has to be presented. When you present respect, you walk in with your boundaries, and the boundaries are not shutting people down and turning your head and being an elitist. It's literally just walking in and engaging with those you feel want to engage with you on that emotional, spiritual, whatever level. If you're just walking in and walking up to the first group that gave you attention and what they're talking about you have no interest in, but you emotionally start judging them, that's not fair either, because they didn't ask you to come over there and stay there and act like you wanted to be a part of that energy. So why compete with energy you don't belong in, right? This is the most important thing I tell everyone that I meet. They feel like their abundance has to look a certain way. That's fine, but it might not look that way. And so you have to be okay with how you win. However you win, as long as you win, set the goal, put it forth. So my end goal is to continuously create educational content and continuously just be a beacon and a voice for spirit and soul to work through, right? That's a purpose of mine. My function is more about just being my own example. I love it if I make examples for others, but being my own example has been the best privilege ever, because it's allowed me to heal that inner child wound of daddy not being there or mommy not being there the way I needed them to be at that time. And now when I allow myself to win sometimes and lose sometimes, because there's times when I have to let myself lose, where it's like, there's no reason for you to be trying to win this right now. This is all ego. You just want to prove a point. And I'll be like, yep, I sure do it. It's like, do you think that's going to help you in the end? And I'm like, no. And it's like, let them win, let them have it, because you know that you could win. You know that you could verbally, emotionally just tear it all apart. But why, right? Because it creates a ripple effect. And that ripple effect will come back to you. This is why I believe in energy work, because when we know that we have to be present not only for ourselves but for others, it does feel very heavy. And you do start feeling like you have to be a certain way and perfect things a certain way so that you're not like coming off as a F up or something. But that's not it. It's really just being about knowing that you are willing to lose, win, but have fun through the whole process. Because that's what it's all about. Like, the soul work doesn't have to be so heavy. It doesn't have to be daunting. I met a lot of people where they're like, oh my God, all you talk about is trauma and work and this and that. And it's like, I mean, I can have fun with it. I love talking about it. But the reason I talk about it is because the people I'm around, they don't even realize that they're bleeding all over the place. They're just big old open wounds. And every time they talk, it's just blood gushing out. No. They did this to me. Gush, gush, gush. They made me feel this way. Gush, gush, gush. Everything always happens to me. Gush, gush, gush. Right? But you're like, hey, here's a bandage, here's some pressure, here's how you stop gushing all over the place. Oh, they get mad at you. And that's the part where it's like, sometimes you have to let people bleed out that old energy, and then one day they will be so tapped out and they will be tired, and that's where you're going to have to let the death of the old you die. Let them die and let them rebirth into the you that you currently want to be and currently are presenting, because no one can tell you how you need to show up in this world. How you show up is how you choose to show up, and if it comes off as too good to be true, so be it, because you will align with that other energy that is too good to be true also, and y'all could be too good to be true together. Or whatever situation it is. It's just, again, we have to remember the human body is a vessel. It has memory, it has consciousness, it's all about remembering the self, but the soul's past are a bunch of checkpoints. And if we really want to live a happy, content life on this earth, you're going to have to be willing to walk through that darkness and hold your soul's hand. Because the whole time you've existed, your soul has held your hand, but it starts to feel resentment. Remember, the soul was a child before too. All of our memories are based on memories of our past, and every human was a child first, and then an adult, and then an elder. So every person, every energy has its naivety and its side of it that still is like, why can't I get there? Why is that not me? Why is that not working the same way for me? This is where we take the time to learn and really learn. Not just say we learn for the aesthetics, but learn for our own sanity. Learn for our own emotional health and wealth. Because when we really appreciate that it's not about failing or winning, it's just about completing the race. Just complete the race. I know a lot of us don't want to even be in the race, but if you're not in the race, you're on the sidelines. So it is a choice. Just don't hate on others because they choose to participate. And if you choose to participate, don't hate on those who choose to sit on the sidelines, because you both are, again, a dualistic whole to each other, and you both are a polarized version of the same thing. Participation, dynamics of competition, whatever it might be, just know that the energy is always about you, okay? I hope this makes sense. I always say that, soul talk is never really easy because it can go so many different directions in so many different ways, but I hope that the words reach those who it reaches, and I hope it makes sense to those it needs to make sense to. And I thank you again for going on this journey with me, as we are all specks of the universe in soul consciousness. Thank you. Bye-bye.